In the heart of Tokyo's most expensive financial district, there's a patch of moss-covered ground worth $0. Why? Because everyone who tried to destroy it didn't just die, they died screaming, their bodies twisted in agony. This is the story of a samurai's severed head that flew 300 miles and has been killing people for 1,000 years. His name was Taira no Masakado. In the year 940, he declared himself the new emperor of Japan. Ambition like that gets you killed. And it did. The real emperor sent an army. They cut off Masakado's head and mounted it on a pike in Kyoto as a warning, this is what happens to traitors. But 3 days later, something impossible happened. The head opened its eyes. Witnesses reported the head began shrieking, demanding its body back. Then, defying every law of nature, it launched itself into the sky like a vengeful comet. According to records, the head flew east for 300 miles before crashing down in what is now Tokyo's Otemachi district. The impact left a crater. The locals were terrified, but they buried the head with honor, hoping to appease the warrior's simmering fury. It didn't work. For centuries, the burial site became known as a place where the boundary between life and death was dangerously thin. Strange lights, unexplained disappearances, a malevolent presence that refused to rest. Then came 1923. The Ministry of Finance decided they needed that land. Money outweighed fear. They built a massive office building directly over the tomb. Within 2 years, 14 high-ranking government officials working in that building died under mysterious circumstances. Not all at once, slowly, methodically, like something was hunting them. Heart attacks, sudden illnesses, unexplained falls. The deaths were so frequent that workers refused to enter certain floors. Some claimed they felt invisible hands pushing them toward stairwells. The government tried to keep it quiet, but in 1940, on the 1000th anniversary of Masakado's death, nature made an announcement. A lightning bolt struck the ministry building with surgical precision. The structure that had been built over the tomb burned to the ground. 7 hours of flames, total destruction. No other building in the area was touched, just the one that had desecrated Masakado's resting place. Coincidence? The engineers found no gas leaks, no electrical faults. After the war, the Americans occupied Japan. They didn't believe in samurai ghosts. That was their first and last mistake. In 1945, U.S. military engineers began bulldozing the site to build a parking lot. The bulldozer driver died on the first day. His machine had inexplicably flipped over, crushing him instantly like an insect. The Americans investigated, found no mechanical failure. The bulldozer was in perfect condition, but the driver's face, frozen in death, showed absolute terror. They tried again the next week with a different driver. He suffered a massive stroke at the exact moment he touched the controls. He survived barely, but never spoke again. The U.S. military command made a decision that day. They abandoned the project entirely. No parking lot was worth this. The local Japanese officials approached the Americans with a proposal: rebuild the shrine properly, with respect. The Americans, for once, listened. In 1946, a Shinto priest performed a purification ritual that lasted 3 days. They rebuilt the tomb, stronger than before. An uneasy truce was formed. For decades after, office workers walking past the tomb would bow slightly just in case. Better safe than haunted. But in the 1980s, Japan's economy exploded. Real estate developers saw that empty land and got greedy again. History, they thought, was just superstition. Money was real. The long-term credit bank built their headquarters nearby. They sealed the windows on the side facing Masakado's tomb. Not for architectural reasons, because employees reported seeing a figure in samurai armor, staring at them through the glass, watching, waiting. Within a decade, that bank collapsed. In Japan's biggest financial scandal, billions lost, careers destroyed. The building was demolished in 2000. Some collapses aren't financial. Some are curses. Today, the tomb sits in the middle of Otemachi, surrounded by some of the most valuable real estate on Earth. Land worth millions per square meter. Except for this spot. This spot is worthless. and priceless. Every major corporation nearby has the tomb's location marked on their construction plans in red, meaning untouchable. Security guards in the district report something strange. On certain nights, the automatic lights around the tomb flicker in sequence, like something is walking a perimeter, circling the shrine. But security cameras never capture anything, just empty footage. And that flickering pattern. I visited the site last spring. It's surreal seeing salarymen in $1,000 suits bowing to a pile of stones, but they do, every single one, without exception. There's a small offering box. It's always full. Coins, sake bottles, even business cards from executives. They're buying protection or forgiveness. The atmosphere there is different. Even with traffic noise and construction everywhere, there's a pocket of silence around the tomb. Like sound itself is afraid to get too close. An old security guard told me something that his father worked on the 1946 reconstruction. He taught him one rule, passed down like scripture. Never ever turn your back to the tomb. Always face it when you pass. Always bow. Because Masakado isn't resting. He's watching. 1,000 years of rage doesn't just disappear. It waits. In 2020, during Tokyo Olympics preparation, construction crews accidentally damaged a corner of the tomb's fence. Just a crack, small mistake, huge consequences. 3 workers were hospitalized that week with identical symptoms, sudden paralysis on their right side, the side that held the tools, the side that struck the stone. The fence was repaired within 48 hours. A priest was called. All 3 workers made full recoveries the day after the purification ritual. Not coincidence, cause and effect. Here's what makes this different from other ghost stories. This isn't folklore, it's urban policy. The Tokyo Metropolitan Government officially recognizes Masakado's tomb as a protected spiritual site, not for historical reasons, for safety. They won't admit it's because of a curse. They call it cultural preservation. But everyone knows the truth. You can't bulldoze a body count. There's a corporate tradition now. New CEOs in Otemachi visit the tomb on their first day. It's unofficial, but mandatory. Skip it, and your tenure tends to be short. Because the companies that didn't, the ones that built without paying respect, they're not in business anymore. Every single one. I spoke with a structural engineer who works in the area. He told me something he's never mentioned publicly. His hand shook as he said it. When they drill foundation pylons near the tomb, equipment malfunctions at a rate 3 times higher than normal. Not just occasional breakdowns, systematic failures. Drill bits snap, hydraulic lines burst, electronic systems crash, always when pointed toward the tomb. Turn the equipment away? It works perfectly. Insurance companies in Tokyo have a private understanding. Higher premiums for buildings within 200 meters of the site. They don't call it a curse tax. It's listed as geological instability risk, but the geology is fine. I've seen the surveys. Perfect bedrock. The instability isn't in the ground. It's in what's buried there. The most expensive land in Japan, and there's a 60 square meter patch nobody will touch? Think about that. Billions of dollars in potential profit, and they'd rather leave it empty. Masakado died because he wanted to protect his people from corrupt officials. Now those officials bow to his memory every day. Poetic justice, spanning a millennium. Some historians say he won. He didn't become emperor, but he made emperors afraid for 1,000 years. There's a festival held at the tomb every year on his death anniversary, May 8th. It's attended by politicians, bankers, CEOs, the powerful, on their knees. They come to ask permission. Permission to keep building around him. Permission to stay alive. And you know what the terrifying part is? He hasn't said no yet, but he could, anytime. I asked a Shinto priest what would happen if someone actually succeeded in destroying the tomb today. He went pale. The color drained from his face, like I'd spoken a forbidden word. He wouldn't answer directly, just said that person's bloodline would end. Not just them, everyone connected, generations, erased. Modern Tokyo is built on layers of history, but only one piece of that history still has the power to say no. Every other ancient tomb in Tokyo has been moved, relocated for development. But not this one. Never this one. They tried. We know how that ended. The groundskeeper I met has worked there for 30 years. He cleans the tomb every morning at exactly 6 a.m. without fail. Rain, snow, typhoon, he's there. He told me he's never sick, never takes vacation, because the one time he missed a day, his replacement had a stroke. He learned fast. This isn't a job, it's a survival contract. This is the invisible war happening in Tokyo. Ancient power versus modern greed, and the ancient power is winning. There are maintenance workers whose entire job is monitoring this one tomb, checking for cracks, temperature changes, unusual sounds. They carry sensors and prayers, because they believe the tomb itself is a seal keeping something contained, and if that seal breaks, Tokyo breaks with it. In 2011, when the earthquake hit Japan, thousands of buildings collapsed. The tomb didn't even crack, not a scratch. Engineers studied it afterward. The stone shouldn't have survived. It's not reinforced. It's not special material. It just stood, like something was holding it together from the inside. Maybe Masakado is still protecting people, just in a different way, by reminding them that some things are sacred. Cross that line, and the protection stops. Or maybe he's just waiting for someone arrogant enough to try again. History suggests they won't have to wait long. Because every generation thinks they're different, thinks they're smarter, and every generation learns the same lesson, usually the hard way. Respect isn't optional, it's insurance. The most expensive insurance policy in Tokyo, and it costs nothing but pride. Cheapest premium, highest payout. I left an offering when I visited, just a small bottle of sake. The next morning, when I passed by again, it was empty. The groundskeeper smiled when I mentioned it. He said, he only drinks from visitors who show proper respect. I asked how he knew that. He just pointed at all the untouched offerings. From tourists with cameras, still full. Tokyo has 14 million people, countless skyscrapers, trains that run on nanosecond precision. It's the future. But every day, thousands of that future stop, bow, and acknowledge the past, because the past is still watching, and it remembers disrespect. Masakado's head flew 300 miles in the year 940. It's been sitting in Otemachi for 1086 years, waiting, watching, judging. If you ever visit Tokyo, go see the tomb. Not because it's famous, but because it's a reminder that power has many forms. And some forms of power you can't buy, can't demolish, can't ignore. You can only respect or suffer the consequences. Subscribe if you want more stories where history refuses to stay dead. Because in Japan, the past doesn't rest. It waits.